Hi, Rafael. Can you turn on my video or allow me access to turn on my video? Sorry. Okay, I think I can start without a video. I don't think the video is working. I'm afraid about time, so maybe we can get a technical expertise to help us work on the video. Hello, everyone. My name is Yetnevish, and I am so happy to be part of this fantastic webinar today. A new generation and a 25 years effort to end to bring gender equality into education. I am so happy to welcome you all to this webinar, and I am Yetnevish, as I said. I'm joining you from Ethiopia, and I will be first starting with thanking the three organizers of this webinar today. The UNESCO Global Education Monitoring Report, GEMR, and the UNESCO Global Education Monitoring Report, GEMR, and the Forum for African Women Educationalists, FAWE, and the UN Girls in Education Initiative. These three key players in the area of education have invited us today to dwell on a very important topic to my life personally. As you might have heard, I tell people that I am a VIP, and VIP is no longer the usual VIP that you know. It stands for visually impaired person. So I have lost my eyesight when I was 5 years old. And because of that, I was able to escape early marriage, which was widely exercised in our village, and happened to be educated in a special school. Now I am a lawyer by profession, and I am working as a senior manager for the Global Action on Disability, GLAD network. The topic we have today is very important, but I want to start with some house rules. I want to encourage as much interaction from you, our audience, as possible, and invite you all to pose questions on the live chat or on Twitter throughout the event using the hashtag #IamFirstGirl and Generation Equality. These are the two hashtags we use today, and I hope you will be able to see them on the screen. We might not be able to address all your questions, but we encourage you also to put up questions. We may be able to address a few of them today, but we want to collect them and make sure that they are considered later on. The year 2020 is a milestone moment for accelerating the implementation of global commitments to gender equality. 25 years ago, the world committed to improving the rights of girls and women, no matter who they are, or where they come from, in the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. Despite these commitments made in Beijing to take strategic and bold action, girls are still the most likely to suffer extreme exclusion in the world, over making up 3/4 of children of primary school age who have never set their foot to education, to classrooms. In 2018, 130 million girls worldwide were out of school, and 2 out of 3 girls were enrolled in secondary and secondary education. In the fragile context of COVID-19 pandemic, we have to act now, or we risk losing the gains made over the past 20 years and further widen the gaps and threaten to disrupt the education of more than 111 million girls. Released on the occasion of International Day of the Girl Child last October 11, the gender report shows that 68 million girls have been enrolled in primary and secondary education in Sub-Saharan Africa since 1995. Quite a huge move that we would like to congratulate our leaders in the education sector. During the coming 90 minutes, we will hear young women, education policymakers, civil society leaders, gender experts, and university leaders from across the region, all united by a collective ambition to achieve gender equality in education and tackle the unfinished business of the realization of girls' and women's right to education. I would like now to invite our keynote speaker today, Professor Nana Jane Apuko Ajamin, who is the chair of the board of FAWE since 2017 and a former education minister for Ghana. Professor Ajamin is an amazing and special person for me, as she had made quite a huge progress during her time as a minister for education in Ghana. She achieved to reduce teachers' absenteeism in education from 27% to only 7%. She has also transformed all the polytechnic universities and polytechnic schools into technical universities in her time in Ghana. Professor Ajiman, you are the light whom we can see shining in Africa, to believe that me as a woman and as a mother of 3 girls have role models who can take us and take the agenda to a better level. I know that you're running as a candidate for a vice president position in Ghana, and I would like to wish you all the best from here in Ethiopia on behalf of all Africans from the AU capital, and pass over the floor to you to give us your inspiring as usual and opening remarks for today. The floor is yours, Professor Ajiman.
Thank you all very, very much. Thanks for the kind comments, and greetings to everybody, everyone who is listening. I wish to begin by addressing everyone as friends and colleagues, if I may do so, and go on to say how very particularly honored FAWE is to convene this webinar alongside the GEM report and the United Nations Girls Education Initiative. Indeed, it is about time we further explored the complex area of gender equality and girls' education in Sub-Saharan Africa, where despite improved access to basic education, there still remains poverty, other factors that continue to act as barriers to girls' education. For the benefit of those who may not be familiar with FAWE, it is the Forum for African Women Educationalists. We are a Pan-African non-governmental organization founded in 1992 by 5 women ministers for education to promote girls and women's education in Sub-Saharan Africa in line with Education for All. Our mission remains to work together with our partners to create positive societal attitudes, create policies that work, and practices that promote equality for girls in terms of access to quality education. That's very important to me. It's not just the numbers, but that they are getting what it means for them to stay in school, perform highly, move up, and self-actualize. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this year, as we know, marks the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, which was adopted in 1995 and signed on by 189 governments. The implementation of international commitments have resulted in an increase in enrollment. This is in the right direction. We should also, at all times, question the kind of education the girls are getting. But we also know that the global trends mask regional disparities. So much as we have gained the numbers, we haven't quite measured the quality. And now we know also that our gains remain fragile, especially in the face of the COVID-19 global pandemic that risks deepening existing inequalities unless the right to education for all, the right to quality education for all, including the most marginalized, is duly protected. Colleagues and friends, today we feature youth voices from across the continent. That gladdens my heart. Alongside female ministers, university vice-chancellors, education policy makers, gender specialists, and human rights activists. In the true spirit of inclusion and equality, we have taken a look at the findings and recommendations of the 2020 GEM Gender Report. Congratulations to everybody involved, which monitors progress towards gender parity and equality in education from early childhood to adult education, and showcases good policy and practices to protect the right to education for all, particularly for girls and women, but also for boys and men when they are at a disadvantage. Drawing from the findings and recommendations of the reports, we will especially focus on regional efforts to tackle the barriers to girls' education. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it will be impossible to discuss matters to do with the 2020 Gender Report without talking about COVID-19's effects on education generally, and especially on the education of young women and girls. As a result of this pandemic, gender equality has been severely impaired The lockdown and school closures have seen access to paid work, for example, diminish, not to mention the increased load in care or entrapment with an abuser. In closing, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I urge us all to deeply reflect on the challenges holding us back from achieving the gender equality vision and to begin to propose local solutions to some of these problems. I wish to thank all of you for your kind attention. Please enjoy the rest of the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Those were very inspiring words, which really makes us think that even after 25 years, the job is not yet done, and numbers are not the real measurements and the only measurements to measure our success. Yes, you're right. The mirror shows us a very blurry picture of what has happened and what may happen in the future. I'm sure all the participants of our webinar will carry the spirit of your encouragement towards working gender inclusive as well as equal world of education. So I would like to thank you so much for your fantastic inspiring words of opening. I would like now to invite an amazing captain who is gonna take us through today in the coming 90 minutes. Modu Lamin Gergesi is a gender activist and creative writer from the Gambia. He is part of millions of youth in the world fighting for a just cause and in ending all forms of violence against women and girls, and also empower women and girls to acquire education for development. He is a member of He and She Association, a network of men who who supports the gender equality movement and the struggle to get a gender equal education generation. Lamin is also a Secretary General of the FAWE alumni in Gambia, and he is engaged on a number of initiatives to end discrimination based on gender. Lamin, we are so proud and delighted to have you moderate this session. And above all, I'm so happy to see a young man from Gambia moderating this fantastic group of celebrities and distinguished panelists. And I trust that the moments that you will be sharing with these panelists would be definitely productive. So over to you, Lamin.
Thank you very much, Yeti. Good afternoon. Can you all hear me? Hello, am I audible, please? I'd like to know before I go on.
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you very much. And I just have to confess to one thing. I was not really sure of all the important people I was really going to meet here. And to be quite honest, this is just mind-blowing and it's amazing. So I'll just go right ahead. I would like to say a very big thank you to the organizer and of course to the Forum of African Women Educationalists. As Yeti rightly mentioned, I am Lamin Gergesi from the Gambia and I'm so glad to be here. I will take you through I'll just give you a brief biography of the panelists and the participants that I'm going to pose various questions to make sure that we have a very fruitful dialogue and discussion. I'll start with Nicole. Let's say Nicole Vera is a senior analyst in a global education monitoring report, of course, a demographic and a statistician with a solid expert in the field of demography, education, and more broadly in the area of monitoring and evaluation. Well, and policy analyst, wow. Diploma and of course, expert in demography with a PhD in demography and population policy. This is just a brief biography. This is showing the amount or the level of commitment that we have in women that are engaged in science, that are engaged in technology, that are engaged in demographic statisticians and everything that has to do with women in leadership. And of course, this is indeed a great thing to be part of. Okay, Nicole, if you are in call, I would please like you to unmute your mic so we can go ahead with the question. Thank you. Oh, and to say where I am from, we We actually refer to everybody as auntie and uncle, even the youngest person. So Auntie Nicole, glad to see you.
Thank you, Lamin.
Thank you very much. My first question is, well, congratulations on the recent launch of the 2020 gender report. So today's discussion hopes to highlight the progress and challenges specific to our region. Now, can you share with us some of the key takeaways from this 2020 gender report? However, this is question one. I would ask you a follow-up question. So when you answer this, you'll also have the opportunity to go ahead with the second question. The second question is, you were recently appointed as a co-chair of an international parliamentary network for education. How will the network engage with MPs from across Africa to deliver inclusive and equitable for girls and women? Of course, with all due respect, you have 3 minutes to answer this question. And please, you're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Lamin, and good morning to everyone participating to this important event. This report, the 2020 gender report, comes at a critical time. First, we want with it to take stock of progress towards girls and women education worldwide since the adoption of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action in 1995. Second, we really felt that it's really important for such a report, just like the GEM report 2020, which theme was on inclusion and education. So we want with the gender report to address the issue of intersectionality. Why? Because we really think that it's a key to pay the due attention to intersecting inequality, to make gender equality in education more inclusive. So, girls and women's education has dramatically improved in Sub-Saharan Africa. There were 68 million more girls enrolled in primary and secondary education. Major improvements in girls' education were made, for example, in Burkina Faso, Djibouti, in primary education, in Ghana, Malawi, and Mauritania. Why? These were countries where in 1995 important gender disparity in education was observed, and now they are at gender parity. Yet, despite the overall progress, access to education remains an important issue for girls in Sub-Saharan Africa due to cost and persisting discriminatory social norms that continue to hinder women's education. Globally, 9 million out-of-school girls may never set a foot in school, and more than 4 million of them live in Sub-Saharan Africa. The intersection of gender with other factors of disadvantage compounds disparity. In at least 20 countries around the world, hardly any poor, rural young women will complete upper secondary schools. And this is the case in Benin, Congo, and Zimbabwe. The legacy of past discrimination against girls and women is such that only 81 adult women per literate were literate in 2018 for every 100 literate men. This despite the fact that mother's education is so key for children's and their doctors' education. The most disadvantaged women are further left behind in terms of literacy skills. For instance, in Mozambique, 49% of men with disability can read and write, compared to only 17% of women with disability. Important barriers remain for girls' education in Sub-Saharan Africa, including child marriage and early pregnancy, both of which leads to early school leaving for those affected. Many schools are also not inclusive of girls, who often suffer from school-related gender-based violence. For instance, in countries like Mali, Mauritania, and Senegal, most primary schools lack toilets for girls. Yet this has an important bearing for effective menstrual hygiene management, and is especially relevant in Sub-Saharan Africa, where a high percentage of students are overage. All these factors require urgent attention. Yet, in spite of the good intentions in laws and policies on inclusion education, governments often do not take the follow-up actions necessary to ensure implementation. So the second question that was direct to me actually is about the recommendation made by this key report. The gender report has made some recommendation that proves education relevance to each of the 6 action coalitions themes that were identified for the Generation Equality Forum, planned for 2021. First, there is a need to eliminate gender disparity in education and ensure 12 years of safe and quality education for all girls, including pregnant girls and young parents who must be supported to go to school. In a country like Sierra Leone, at least 20% of school-age girls are not in education because of pregnancy. Ensure balanced representation of girls and women in TVET and STEM. In Sub-Saharan Africa, much fewer women are enrolled in tertiary education, but even when they are enrolled, they face gender segregation in fields of studies that affect career prospects and equality in work opportunities. In Lesotho, Mozambique, and Niger, there were only some 6% female graduates from STEM field of studies. There is a need to remove gender stereotypes and bias from teaching and learning materials. A study of social studies textbooks in grade 5 to 8 in Ethiopia found only 12% of names being female names. When included, women are often depicted in traditional roles, reflecting persisting discriminatory social and gender norms. There is a need to make school safe space for all girls and boys, free from gender-based violence. In Ghana, Kenya, and Mozambique, girls report to it was difficult for them to decline teachers' proposal as they fear retaliation. There is a need to build an inclusive school ethos with respect to clear rules about what is acceptable. Teachers should be prepared to take critical views on their attitude and values. And basic sanitation facilities need to be made available and improved to strengthen feelings of privacy and safety. All students at all levels of education must have access to comprehensive sexuality education, which helps students challenge discriminatory gender norms and has been shown to prevent school-related gender-based violence and contribute to reduce early pregnancy. There is a need, finally, to ensure a more gender balanced representation in education management and leadership position. Teaching is a feminized profession in many parts of the world, at least up to upper secondary education. But this is far from being the case in Sub-Saharan Africa. For instance, even in primary education, the share of female teachers in 2018 was below 30% in Benin, Comoros, Djibouti, and Sierra Leone, and less than 20% in Togo. Yet, evidence from African countries shows that girls are more likely to go to school and parents are more willing to send them to school and keep them there when female teachers are present, since they are important model for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that is quite clear and understanding. I think one thing that we need to re-emphasize is the importance of girls being retained at school, even after them being dropped out and given back. I think this is also one thing that we've been talking about over and over again, because I remember in 2017 during the Fawe Girls Educational Conference in Lusaka, this was the recommendation that was put forward. I mean, an initiative was launched called the Mop Out of School Girls, where I directly engaged 16 ministers of education across Africa on gender mainstreaming. But in part of the recommendations that are also being put is to make sure that girls are reinstated into the educational sector. I mean, they're taken back to schools, those who actually drops out of teenage pregnancy. And I think if this is re-emphasized more and educational policies are being pushed, of course, we will have a more gender responsive and a gender balanced environment for women and girls all over the country. Thank you very much, Nicole. We're glad that you're here. And of course, there will be other questions in the chat, which we will get to later on. Thank you. And I'll go to my next speaker, Madam Lydia Wilbert. Are you in call, please? If you are, I'll please request you to unmute your mic. Thank you very much.
Everyone, Lamin, is this me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. All right. I'm really pleased and pleased to be taking part in this webinar today. And thank you for this opportunity. So, yeah, my name is Lydia Wilbert and I am here.
Glad to see you, Ma. I just have two questions for you, and quickly I would give you both, and you will have time, 3 minutes, to answer these questions respectively. And my first question goes, Tanzania continues to be a country where poverty, rurality, and socio-cultural factors remain persistent barrier to girls' education. How are you working with the government and communities to improve girls' access to secondary education? That is the first question. And then the second question is, we know that female teachers have an important role in addressing access and quality issues in girls' educational experiences, especially in the places where women are underrepresented in political employment and leadership positions. Can you tell us a bit more about CAMFED's teachers' mentors and how they are working to ensure that most vulnerable girls stay in school? Please.
Sure. Thank you, Lamin. So just to start with the first question around how we are working with the government and communities, I would say in CAMFED, we owe the community-owned model. And I have been with CAMFED since its launch in 2005. And now we are partnering with 819 government schools, and also working with thousands of community members to enhance girls' access to secondary education. And the success of our model really centers on the community taking ownership of every aspect of the program. And this includes from identification of the girls to be supported, the delivery of their entitlement, but also the monitoring of their learning in class, and providing day-to-day monitoring of their progress and mentorship together with psychosocial support that they need as vulnerable to be able to succeed in school. And this includes also cooking school meals, teachers volunteering as teacher mentors, and also government partners providing support and opportunities for young women as they leave school. But most importantly is that the member of the CAMFED Association, the KAMA, so these are the girls that were supported through school by CAMFED, and they joined the network. And these are women who have first-hand experience of lived poverty and exclusion, and therefore they understand exactly what is needed for a girl to be able to remain in school and succeed. For example, we currently partner with 954 CAMFED Association members who are active and trained as renegade. So what they do, they return to their former schools to deliver life skills and well-being sessions. And these are critical for the children to be able to build their confidence, set goals, and achieve them. And also, beyond the classroom, the renegades creates important homeschooling, following up on children who might present the indications of dropping out. And they bring back, working with the communities and the schools, they are able to bring them back and also create an environment that is safe to escape child marriage, especially for the vulnerable girls. And we are also now exploring the potential for scaling the Renegade program towards the success across the government school systems. And we are very proud and excited that this month, the minister from the President's Office, Regional Administration and Local Government have recognized the activism of renegades and their service to vulnerable children in their communities, and also confirmed its full support towards scaling the program. And as you may be aware that this followed the recognition of CAMFED's co-executives, Angeline Mulimirwa and Luce Lake, with the Idani Prize, which was a profound really endorsement of CAMFED community-led model for girls' education, particularly what we are achieving through the Renegade program. So it's really an exciting time for us as we enter the new phase of our strategic plan. And the Learner Guide program has huge potential to help us reach millions more vulnerable girls across Africa and improve not just their access, but also the retention and the learning outcome that we anticipate the girls to be able to achieve. And to your second question around the teacher mentors and the Learner Guide, just to say that there are 2 trained teacher mentors in each of the government secondary schools that we partner with, the 819 that I talked about. And they receive specialized training from CAMFED on child protection and safeguarding, but also in partnership with the Ministry of Health, Community Development, Gender, Elderly and Children, they are also trained to be able to provide psychosocial support. The CAMFED teacher mentors are often female, and so along with the learner guides, they are able to provide the relatable role modeling and mentorship to the girls, especially in rural communities where this is really missing. And of course, teachers have many pressures on them. They have to teach, they have to do all the requirements that the government teacher would have to do. So the learner guides, they provide that kind of backup to the teachers. And they act as big sisters who are usually only a few years older. So they are kind of peers to the students and have lived a similar life of vulnerability. So they can take time to get to know the students and the issues they face. And also students are able to relate with them and they kind of trust them. So when the students are absent, the learner guides can follow up with their friends and families and make plans for the teacher with the teachers to turn them back. So it has been really a challenging year in terms of education system everywhere. And I think notably in South Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, for example, when schools were closed, our CAMFED association members and the teacher mentors joined the Community Development Committee to lead the phone monitoring of almost 10,000 vulnerable children. I remember in the introduction, someone talked about making sure that we get in touch to the students. So this was purposely for being able to get in touch to the children as they remained home. And teacher mentors and learner guides were also visiting the most vulnerable students at home, where it was safe to do so, guided by the rules and guidelines by the ministry. But most importantly, they delivered the small sessions and papers, which was so critical for them to continue revising, as most of them had no scope for online learning. And our learner guide also stepped up to offer life skill sessions on radio stations and joined the phone-in program on child protection and parenting during the crisis. For example, I spoke to Eva. Eva is the learner guide from Bagamoyo, who talked about how she had joined the teachers and community development group, WhatsApp group, because she has access. And there they were posting past papers and questions for the student to revise. But realizing that there are those who cannot have that access, she was able to make a printout of some papers and distribute house to house to some of the children who needed it. And herself also, the business that she was running as a shop was hit badly by the COVID. So she had to expand and diversify her business and getting into farm. And just recently she shared a bumper crop of pineapples. So it was like kind of COVID also brought in some creativeness in terms of diversifying young women's business. So to bring it back to the keeping girls in school, it's also so important that young women can succeed after graduating from school because they are key activists, leaders, philanthropists in changing things for the next generation. That's why the learner guide also receives business training and access to interest-free loans as they are paying social interest through their community work. This means that they can earn more money they need for their own and their family's survival, but they can also help grow rural economy and provide jobs and improve food security. They can also use their profit to support more children to go to school. Just for your information, on average, CAMFED Association member supports another 3 girls and children through school, and that's the multiplier effect. So they can also show their communities all the incredible benefits of girls' education and shift embedded gender norms. Because sometimes you really need to see the benefits before you can decide to invest in girls' education. They can also give more girls that motivation they need to stay in school, because they can now see themselves in a different future for when they grow up. So it's a renegade is a sustainable, scalable, individual cycle. And there is never been a more critical time to investment in this combination of girls' education and young women leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Lydia. I must say this is amazing, and all that you have. Sorry. And thank you very much. We appreciate all the time that you have taken today to share with us your experience and all that is going through with the organization. We hope that in the coming years, of course, this is going to be a thing that we are going to be so happy and proud of, because a lot of changes are going to come along the pipeline. We thank you very much, Lydia, and it's good to have you here. Thank you once again. So next I'll go to, well, a very young leader, I would say. When I say women and girls are doing amazingly in the sub-region, it is not just a word of mouth. It is indeed true that a lot of young women and girls are doing amazingly well. Next is Ines Nafi Mustafa, a youth advocate from Sierra Leone. Good to see you, ma. And of course, Ines Nafi Mustafa is a 22-year-old writer and author of Girls, Planet, and Educational Exchange Story, of course, bringing up some of the causes of teenage pregnancy in Sierra Leone. She is the founder and head of the Strong Girls Revolution. Wow. Okay. Now this is getting interesting. She is the founder and the head of Strong Girls Revolution, which is an online movement in Sierra Leone promoting personal development among young females in Sierra Leone. She started advocacy at age 15, and she is interested in personal development and co-tailing issues affecting young females in Sierra Leone. Ines is currently a law student at Federal College, University, Australia. I must say, the president of Sierra Leone should get access to, honestly speaking. Of course, then the Minister of Basic and Secondary Education in Sierra Leone should really reach out to you. These are amazing things that young people are doing, and of course, we want it to be empowered to all levels possible. So, Ines, to your two questions. First is, we know from the report that early pregnancy rates are high across the continent. Of course, are high across the continent. And 1 in 4-year-old is a mother in Sub-Saharan Africa, which is a major barrier to girls' education. Can you tell us a bit more about your book, Girls, Planet, on adolescent pregnancy, and what inspired you to write it? That is the first question. And then the second question is, business as usual will not surface to achieve gender equality in and through education, once and for all. What urgent message do you want to give to the Ministers of Education as we enter into the decade of action for gender equality? And what is the role of youth in affecting this change? Of course, I would quickly like to tell you, in sending this message to the Ministers of Education, I would please also like you to also send this message to Prof. Nana, who is currently running for vice presidency in Ghana. Of course, when you are vice president, of course, which we all pray and hope for, I wish we can all go to Ghana and vote. If you are vice president, these changes are also going to be in full effect. We are expecting your office to do a lot of things in making sure that women and girls' education are empowered. So, Ines Nafi, please, you can go on.
Thank you very much, Lamin. Thank you so much. I totally agree that early pregnancy is a problem in Sierra Leone. It is a problem in West Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa as a whole. When I decided to write my book, Girls, Planet, Teenage Pregnancy, I thought about two things. First, I thought about my passion for writing, and I also thought about my passion for advocacy. Girls Planet was all about creating the link between two things that I loved. About what inspired me to write the book, believe me, so many things inspired me to write Girls Planet. First of all, I looked at our society. Mostly people say we need equality in society. We need empowered women in society. But they mostly forget that in order for us to have empowered women, we need empowered girls. And in order for us to have empowered girls, we need to ensure that hurdles serving as obstacles to the empowerment of girls are removed. And one of those hurdles is teenage pregnancy. Teenage pregnancy is an issue in Sierra Leone, serving as a hurdle to the empowerment of young girls. So if we are to have empowered women in the future, we have to work on raising empowered girls right now. Then the other thing that inspired me to write Girls Planet is the rate of teenage pregnancy in Sierra Leone. I stand to be corrected, but according to UNFPA, in 2013, girls between the ages of 15 to 19 years, about 28% of them were either pregnant or they already had a baby. Then Sierra Leone had the Ebola outbreak. After the Ebola outbreak, we also had a very high rate of teenage pregnancy. And that wasn't encouraging in any way, because when girls become pregnant in Sierra Leone, you have so many things that affect them later on. So if we are to reduce that rate of teenage pregnancy in Sierra Leone, one has to think outside of the box. So I thought about using my writing skills to help curtail teenage pregnancy. Then I also thought about providing a sort of guidance for young girls. That inspired me. When I was coming up, I had no Sierra Leonean focus book that I could go to and read relatable things about some of the causes of teenage pregnancy in Sierra Leone. I was inspired to provide that for young girls. I wrote Girls Planet as a book which young girls can take, read, and can be able to relate to. There are so many things there, and the language is simple, and it has more to do with the diction of young girls. Because I'm 22, it's not been too long since I moved from the teenage age. So I thought about presenting something relatable to them. So that also inspired me, presenting a relatable guide to young girls. Then I also thought about bridging the gap. Mostly, some stakeholders see things differently. Girls also see things in a way, then parents too see things in a way. My book is not just centered on girls. It's a book that stakeholders can read, parents and guardians can also read, and they can be able to identify some of the causes of teenage pregnancy. I keep emphasizing on some because there are so many causes of teenage pregnancy, and one cannot be able to capture everything. So I did my best to look at the major causes. Then I also was inspired to write Girls Planet to highlight issues, relatable issues. In the book, I brought up issues like the role of social media. Social media is quite good, but it can be harmful too. So I brought up some of the ways that girls are lured into sexual activities, then teenage pregnancy serving as a result based on the wrongful use of social media, because it can be used positively. Then I also brought up the issue of child marriage. For me, child marriage and teenage pregnancy are interrelated here. Because if laws are not effectively implemented and girls are given into child marriage, at the end of the day, teenage pregnancy will result, and that will create a link between the two. I also brought up issues of inadequate access to SRHR education. I was also inspired to bring that up because growing up, sex talk was a taboo, and it's still a taboo to a certain extent. So girls do not mostly have inadequate information to be able to make proper choices. So I was inspired to give them that. I was also inspired with regards bringing up issues to raise the issue of sexual penetration. The rate of sexual penetration in Sierra Leone is not encouraging. As early as 2019, our president had to declare a state of emergency on rape and sexual assault based on the reports that came about. And I'm so excited that our First Lady is currently championing this. So writing my book was inspired by my love for advocacy, writing, bringing up issues Looking at your second question with regards my message to ministers of education out there as we enter a new decade of gender equality, I want to say to them first, they have to ensure that we have a level playing field. A level playing field in the sense that females shouldn't think that the only weapon that they have in order for them to be educationally empowered should be the use of sex for grades. The use of sex for grades is something very common. Mostly, you have these male teachers, you have these male tutors, lecturers, and the like that require females to use a barter system. And if we are talking about gender equality, a female's brain is quite enough for that female to pass an examination. So ministers of education, they have to strongly fight the use of sex for grades as females are being harassed in some educational institutions. And with regards the attainment of gender equality in the educational sector, we have to ensure that there are equal opportunities. Females have to have equal opportunities as males with regards access to education, etc. And the other thing is regards the implementation of laws and policies. I know that our leaders in Africa are quite popular for making laws, making policies, giving international commitments, and that's fine. It's fine to make laws, it's fine to develop policies, it's fine to make commitments internationally, but they have to start working on implementation. It's not just about saying child marriage is banned according to our law, but how are you ensuring that it is effectively implemented? It's not all about saying, oh, there should be gender equality in the educational sector. How are you ensuring that gender equality is actually being implemented? Our ministers of education have to go back to the drawing board. They have to work on their implementation strategies. Everything have to be effectively implemented. Gone should be the days wherein they just make commitments without effective implementation. The role of youth in everything for me have to do with, one, ensuring that our leaders are held accountable. They have to be held accountable in whatsoever commitments that they give. Youth should also be effectively involved in advocacy, because we shouldn't say it's not our concern and it's not our time. Youth, for me, are no longer the future of Africa. We are the now. And in order for us to ensure that Africa reaches the peak that we've always envisioned, we have to be effectively involved. We have to press forward. We have to monitor our leaders to ensure that the commitments that they make with regard to gender equality is really being attained. And they are really not just talking the talk, they have to walk the walk too. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eunice. And I think this is I mean, highly respectable. One thing that I will take from your talking is we are no longer the future of Africa. We are the now. And until and unless we take up the responsibility as young people to make sure that policy makers, the policy evaluators, the policy implementers push these policies to a greater level, we are not going to see any changes. And again, I am so glad that we have people here who are, of course, going to be stakeholders in one way or the other to make sure, all of us included, of course, to make sure that women and girls' education are empowered to all sectors. I just want to elaborate on this matter. I mean, when your first lady came to the Gambia, I think sometime last year with the initiative of Hands Off Our Girls, I think there's an initiative that she started, I mean, Fatima, there's an initiative she started in Sierra Leone. And when she came to the Gambia, when I met her, is how are you going to make sure that this same initiative is brought to the Gambia? Because we've seen situations where girls are being raped, girls are being assaulted, girls are being kicked out of school, girls are being cajoled into having sex with their lecturers for grades and for all of that. And then the saddest part is we've seen in situations where the government itself or government officials, top officials, will send delegations to victims' family to negotiate to make sure cases are dropped and all of that. So when I talk to her on how she is going to make sure that this same project or this same initiative is brought to the Gambia, because she gave out very good recommendations. But then, policymakers, politicians, and all of that, we hope and wish that someday soon we're going to see a lot of changes in the whole of Africa and not just in one or two places. Thank you very much, Eunice. It was a pleasure having you here. And of course, please do stick around so we can have more questions coming later on. Thank you, and we are so glad. Next, I have Professor Christine. Professor Christine, are you in call, please? If you are here, I will please request you to unmute your mic. Thank you.
Yes, I'm on.
Thank you very much, Ma. Well, of course, I'll just give you a rundown of the professor's background. Professor Christine is a vice-chancellor of the Muni University, Uganda, and board member of the Forum for African Women Educationalists, FAWE, a university professor, a wildlife scientist, an administrator, and a community leader. Professor Dranzo also served as a member of the Uganda National Examination Board and Higher Education Student Financing Board. Professor Dranzo has published widely in professional journals and has written chapters in scientific books pertaining to her field of specialization. This is amazing, and congratulations for all these achievements, Ma. And it's an honor to have you on board. I'll quickly go on to the two questions that I have for you. First is the gender report shows that the share of females in engineering or ICT in tertiary education is below 25% in over 2/3 of countries. What type of efforts are being made to ensure a balanced representation of girls and women in STEM? That is the first question. The second question is, in your experience, what type of interventions are successful in addressing the gender differences in the pathways to higher education? These are the questions, and the floor is yours to answer and lead us into a fruitful discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, moderator. I am very far near DRC and South Sudan, and my internet is not very stable, and therefore I am going to request that I use audio only. Is that okay, moderator?
Yes, please. So long as we can hear the deliberations, that is totally okay.
Thank you very much. I want to appreciate all the organizers for bringing me on board at this very important webinar. I have been listening very keenly, and I'm quite excited that I shall be making some little contribution on how we can pursue a continuous effort to make the changes that will see the gender equity and equality that the world desires. I want to start by appreciating all the presenters. They have spoken so much about some of the types of efforts already. But I would like to categorize these efforts in two forms. The first effort is in policy frameworks. And when we talk about policy frameworks, we know there are so many national, regional, and continental policies that govern gender equality, gender equity in education. Therefore, there is no question about the consciousness of our governments over the importance of the roles that the female gender makes in the growth and development of our continent. That be it, I like to single out a couple of cases for the East African region. Education is a human rights issue in almost all the nations of East African governments. What does that mean? There is no question that we should be able to question where there is disparity, where there is exclusion, and where there is unfairness. I want to give you a typical example in Uganda, where our constitution emphasizes education as a human right and goes ahead since 1991 to establish an affirmative action for access into higher education for girls. This access policy gives for the girl child entering into the university 1.5 points. The principle behind here is not to undermine the capacity, the IQ, or the level of understanding of the girl child. The recognition is that there are so many confounding factors that affect the girl child study, which the keynote speaker elaborated so much about. The working environment for the girl child, the gender stereotyping, the poverty levels, and the exclusion of girl child unless we put the environment right. And through this, I can assure you there is gender parity in the education, higher education in Uganda. However, when you segregate the access into higher education into the STEM subjects, you will see a gaping difference in the STEM sciences, STEM subjects. Therefore, this affirmative action has brought on board engineers that would have never got access. It has brought on board medical doctors. All the scientific disciplines are represented now in this country through that affirmative action. There is a lot of talk of whether to reduce this or not, but in my own opinion, affirmative action can also equally be given to the boy child where it is applicable. Financing higher education is another very critical area where if steps are not taken, the girl child will remain out of school because of the financing difficulties. In the East African country, and I know also in West Africa, there are higher education loan schemes. And these loan schemes, I was in Ghana about 2 years ago, and the loan scheme has really stepped up the access to higher education to the most vulnerable. Now, what examples can other Sub-Saharan African countries speak from here? Because I chair the higher education students loan scheme in my country, we made a deliberate effort to give additional points for hard to reach and impoverished districts, so that those children and girls coming from those areas have access to loans. And this is turning things around. We want to thank our government so much. And another interventions that are of strategic action which I think can be scaled out, is what we call higher education access program, which comes through the bridging courses. Most of the Ugandan universities now have adopted the bridging courses for girls who have dropped out of school because of various issues and barriers. Now, how does access obtain? Access has been funded by the MasterCard Foundation through FAWE, and so now it is scaling outwards, upwards to even non-public universities. What is happening now is that those students, those girls who could not access universities because their points are less, have now opportunity to go for 1-year course and make good, if it means learning mathematics, physics, chemistry from that level, so that they are able to access either diploma or degree courses or certificate or TVET. This is a beautiful program which is now increasing the number of girls in STEM because there is bridging course. The last question that you asked, in my experience, the types of interventions that are successful in addressing the gender differences in the pathways in higher education. Let me tell you that the network system is a very important system for mentorship. It fosters a sense of belonging among women in STEM, because you know, higher education can be a lonely walk. You take hours and hours in the lab, and when you get drained and you don't have peer networking, it becomes very depressing. And so that is a system which can practically work. Role modeling has been talked about already for women to women interface in the science realm is very, very important. And we already have such programs sponsored by FAWE, FAWE networks, and it is working perfectly well. Accessibility to research. Accessibility to research, research resources, equipment, and others for women in STEM, in tertiary education, is a very important deliberate effort. There are some hard to reach areas where children even don't have where to read. And therefore, how can we, bring resources closer so that we empower them and mentor them to enjoy and love science right from the beginning? The empowerment through financial support, I have already talked, but empowerment through financial report, should be sustained. I see that my time is out, but scholarships, deliberate scholarships to girls intentionally should be sustained, because this is a war. We will not win it very, very, very fast, but we need deliberate effort to champion and continue with the process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Christine. That was a wonderful deliberation, and we thank you very much for all the effort that you've been putting through. So we are hoping that, well, in the long run, we'll have a lot of girls who would be, who would definitely have a willingness to come forward for loans, making sure that they access education. Thank you very much, and we hope to have you next time. And please don't go, please stay around, so in case we have questions for you, we will direct them to you. Thank you very much, Professor. We are glad once again. Next, thank you very much. We will now hear from Jacinta a member of the Girls Advocacy Alliance, Kenya chapter. Jactina is a teenage mother who managed to return to school despite facing many challenges. Of course, Jacinta is a champion for girls of adolescent girls and young women, particularly with regards to education, child marriage, and gender-based violence. In this video, Justina shares her perspective on the barriers to girls' education in Kenya and the role of collective action and the community in shaping more positive, supportive attitude toward girls' education. So we go with Jacinta. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that video, and we are very, very sorry that we experienced some technical issues with the video, but then the captions were there to help. So I hope that we have at least taken some sense from the video with the help of the captions. So ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor for me to now take the panelists through the question and answers. Of course, now we have to consider the timing because we have a lot of other issues to go attend to. But this is very important. So then we would please urge to all the panelists. This is a sum of question for all of you, but then please limit your questions to just 2 minutes so we can have a rundown of questions, and then we will end the call with the due time. So this goes to all the panelists. However, it's just a question. The first question is, how are you working? I mean, to all the panelists, how are you working to ensure that the COVID pandemic isn't going to push bad gains to all girls' education? How are you working to make sure that the COVID pandemic isn't going to push bad gains to girls' education? I would allow Madam Nicole to go first, please.
Yes, thank you, Lamin. I think as other panelists already mentioned, the current COVID-19 that is still underway and even increasing again has important impact on education in general, on girls' education. Here and there, we already see evidence of, for instance, increase in early marriage and also early pregnancy. So I think it's really important when countries are designing policies to really work on this impact of COVID, to really bear in mind the issue of inclusion. Because once again, COVID-19 has deepened already existing disparity and inequality in education. So it's really important that inclusion is at the core of policy response to the impact of COVID. Then now, regarding how we at the GEM report, we are trying to make visible the issue of the impact of COVID. Recently, we update our estimate of the funding gap to achieve the SDG 4, factoring in the impact of the COVID pandemic. The policy paper we published recently shows that there is a 148 billion US dollars annual finance gap in low and lower middle income countries to achieve SDG 4 from now to 2030. This is a net increase from the previous estimate we made in 2015, where we show that 39 billion US dollar will be needed to achieve the SDG 4. So the now shorter span of reaching SDG 4, slow progress before 2020, and improvement in data and quality standards are among the reasons for this increase. Additional costs due to COVID-19 related to school closures risk increasing this financial gap by up to 1/3. That is to reach 200 billion per year. Yet investing now in remedial and re-enrollment programs to help get the most marginalized back to schools, including girls, the most marginalized among them, supporting them to catch up and maximize their chance of staying in school could reduce this additional cost by as much as 75%. So this is a way for us as a GEM report to provide evidence of the impact that the COVID-19 may have on the financing of education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that is highly noted and wonderful deliberation if you ask me. Thank you very much, Madam Nicole. To Lydia, if you're in call, I will ask you the same question. what are you working on to ensure COVID-19 pandemic isn't going to push back against the girls' education? Lydia, you're welcome.
Thank you, Lamin. I would also acknowledge that COVID-19 has taught us a great lessons. It has showed us how things can go wrong. And I think it's important for us to design interventions that are basically inclusive and also individualized and holistic. I'm not seeing any one single intervention being able to address and limit the impact that COVID might have, especially on exclusion. And for me, it's critical that all the interventions should make sure that they are community owned, because they are communities who have the exact expertise to be able to address the issues that might limit individuals to come back to school. Like the report is showing that there are a lot of girls that might not come back, but we already know the barriers. There is financial barriers, there is psychosocial issues, there is risk for teenage pregnancy. So I would say that we needed to be able to design interventions that are holistic, inclusive, and also community owned, so that we can push the damage and the impact of COVID-19 that would bring to girls' education. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Lydia. And that's quite a response, and I'm very glad to have your response. Next is Inez Nafi. If you are around, please in just 2 minutes, tell us how are you going to make sure that COVID-19 doesn't hinder your work? I mean, it's not going to push back against for our girls' education with the sector that you're working on.
Well, for Sierra Leone, when COVID first came to Sierra Leone, schools and learning institutions had to close down. So there was no learning for a particular time. However, schools are now reopened, universities too are reopened, and learning is taking place. Also for Sierra Leone, during the Ebola, pregnant girls were prevented from going to school. But based on our recent policy, pregnant girls are now allowed to go to school. So even if we had issues of teenage pregnancy during the short break, wherein girls were not allowed to go to school before, but now they are being allowed to go to school as they can participate in learning irrespective of their status. Not too long ago, we had Girls Plus who launched the Another Chance initiative. The Another Chance initiative, launched by Asma James, is about allowing pregnant girls to return to school. She's facilitating that currently. As for me personally, my major approach to advocacy is writing. Yeah, I have been passing on messages with my articles and the like, but not all girls are online, so far it's inadequate. But I'm currently working on a project wherein I will be reaching out to more girls, because Freetown is in Sierra Leone. We have other parts wherein I can reach out to girls to ensure that they are educationally empowered and to teach them to work on their skills, especially their writing skills, because skills building is quite important. Everyone has his or her own approach, and that is mine. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Skill building is very important, and we appreciate all of that. Thank you once again, Nafi Mustafa. So quickly before I go to Professor Nana, I know she definitely has something to say. But then to Christian, please. This is the same question to you too. How are you going to make sure that COVID-19 doesn't push back your work or doesn't push back against girls' education? Madam Christian, please.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about policy reforms. We are working towards revising our curriculum, or our curricula for that matter, and approaching it with an integrated system, so that we do blended learning. The major issue here is resourcing for everybody, so that everybody is able to access information. But what we also have looking at is integrated gender research. I think the depth and the level of COVID impact in higher education is still not very well understood. We are taking that up. We are writing project proposals with the organizations like Fawe and MasterCard for scholarships, because this is going to deepen the poverty level of our girls. But what we should also note is that there is a very important structural issue that we must learn from this COVID. The manner in which African countries have handled COVID is the way we should adopt for managing gender disparity. I think when we study the structure, I see a benchmarking which we must really pick and try to address issues of gender disparity using the model that has been used in containment of COVID. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'm glad that the response was limited to 2 minutes. Quickly, I'll go to Eunice Nafi again. I have a very important question for you. What is your message to girls who want to be leaders like you? What is your message to girls who want to be leaders like you?
Well, to girls who want to be leaders like me, I'll encourage them to be confident, because confidence is quite important. They have to believe in themselves. They have to believe that they can do it. I believe that young females in Africa are very blessed. We are blessed with a lot of skills. We are very talented, and we have all it takes to help to move the continent to another level. No one should tell you that you are not enough. You are enough. You have everything that it takes. All you have to do is to believe in yourself and to push harder. There might be obstacles, but when obstacles come, it's up to you to overcome those obstacles. You are unstoppable. You have to first dream, then you believe, then you have to take action. I see you. You are a gem. You are precious. Keep moving forward, and you one day become great.
Wow, I must say again, you know, when I keep saying wow, it shows that is amazing. And thank you very much, Inafi Mustafa. Thank you, Nicole. If you are on call, I have a question for you, Nicole Bella. Can you please unmute your mic? And the question is, how can we ensure that issues such as disability and gender are not separated, but are worked on an intersectional approach? When we talk about gender and disability, how are we going to make sure, or how are you going to make sure that they are not separated but are worked on an intersectional approach? Nicole, can you please unmute your mic? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think there is really a need to have intersectionality at the core of policies, because we policies tend to look at averages, to look at problems one after another, and not having a kind of comprehensive and holistic approach to that. So for instance, gender, just like disability or migration status, ethnicity are important factors of disadvantage. So often when policies are designed, they tend to target groups and not really looking at the way disadvantage interact. For instance, gender interact with other kind of other type of disadvantage. So it's really important to have this intersectionality approach. So I think having such an approach when discussing gender is it's important, because often so far when discussing gender equality, we tend first to look at women, at girls, at homes, and not necessarily asking ourselves who are really those who are left behind. So I really think the principle of no leaving no one behind, that is really at the core of the sustainable development agenda. It's really a principle that should be mainstream in all policies and programs to address inequality in education. So not doing that, I think it's really a problem, because it means that problems are solved one after another, and not having this comprehensive, once again, look at issue. There's really a need to go beyond averages to ask who are those left behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think it is quite important also to put into consideration, as Nicole rightly mentioned, let us see who are those behind to incorporate them all into the system, and making sure that gender and disability are issues to be intersectional issues to be inculcated in all sectors. So next, I have Lydia. I have a question for you, Madam Lydia Wilbert. In the context of the COVID-19, we are seeing a shift to digital learning. How is this impacting girls in rural areas? Of course, we know that it has an impact. How is it impacting girls in rural areas and girls with disabilities, for example? And what needs to happen to ensure the most marginalized girls are not left behind in the increasingly digitalized world? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lamin. Yeah, so with the digital learning, if we are not careful, we would see the gap widening. So we need to recognize the needs of different groups and be able to design ways and programs that can be able to cater the needs of different groups. So for example, realizing that the girls who are in rural areas might not have access to TVs. If we are designing programs that are broadcasted on televisions, then we will miss out of those who do not have access. And we understand, I think, clearly the barriers that the rural communities have. And even on COVID-19, there were different interventions that were broadcasted. So I would say, keeping that in mind, integrating it in policies to make sure that what we are designing are able to cater different needs. So tailor-made to make sure that every group is really touched. And talking about the disability, I understand that digital learning is not impossible for the impaired students or clients. So if we are really willing to invest into this digital learning, I'm sure it will benefit everyone. So we needed to take into cognizance of the needs of different groups and make sure that we understand the specific needs, so that, and we are ready as government and associations to be able to invest into extra money that might be required to make sure that that is possible. So I would think that COVID-19 has shown digital learning is possible, but only if it can be inclusive. Otherwise, it's widening the gap. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this is clear and of course, a wonderful deliberation. Well, I am glad to say that I just got a good news from my university that I mean, we did an election last night, so I am now elected as the Honorable Minister for Gender and Health for the University of the Gambia Student Union. Of course, I want to share the good news with all of you first. So yeah, Honorable Member for Gender and Health for the University of the Gambia here speaking to all of you. And it was an honor sharing this platform with all of you. And of course, I would now gently and honorably pass back the mic to Yeti for thank you very much, all of you. I am glad. Thank you.
Okay, that's fantastic, and congratulations, Lamin, for ending with this fantastic news of election result yesterday. So I would like to thank all the distinguished panelists who were part of our amazing panel. This is really great to witness about the need for addressing the issue of gender inclusion from an intersectional point of view. It was stressed that intersectionality needs to be applied when we talk about gender, when we talk about disability, when we talk about migration status. I cannot agree more. I think dealing with inclusion in a silo is a lot of loss. Another important point raised by our panelists was the need for resourcing and the need of learning from our own experience of the containment of COVID-19 in Africa. This is great that we have experience that we can learn from. And finance was repeatedly mentioned as a tool to maintain the gains made lost in the previous decades. Finance is key, and it's really critical to make. We need to make sure that we have alternative solutions to make sure that girls stay in education, women and girls stay in education. So there was a fantastic example about the higher education loan scheme, which was raised to be taken as a good example to focus and invest in higher education of women and girls. I cannot emphasize more about the need for investing of young women in leadership. So when women lead, we have felt the impact of when women lead with this fantastic Eunice from Sierra Leone and on her book with the Girls Planet. I cannot agree more about the need for holding our leaders accountable. We want to transform from the 25 years of efforts. We want to see the 25 years of success as we leave. So we want to have more success stories. We want to have more victories to celebrate in terms of girls and women in education in the coming 25 years. Once again, I would like to say congratulations for Leone, and thank you, a huge thank you for all of you who have been part of the panel and amazing participants who really kept this very, very live. Thank you so much for your questions, your contributions, and quite a lot. I'm sure we will keep this lively through the social media and the Twitters I have shared before. I'm First a Girl and also Generation Equality. Please use those two hashtags. I thank very much the organizers, the UNESCO Global Education Monitoring Report, FAWE, Forum for Education, Forum of African Women Educationalists, as well as the UN Girls Education Initiative. It was a privilege and an honor for me as a woman with a disability and as a mom of 3 girls to discuss about the future of education, which I would hope will be a 25-year of success of gender equality in education. I would like to wish you all a great year ahead. I know it's going to be challenging, but I know also in the meantime that we are here to challenge the more challenging and change it to a better world. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And this brings us into the end of this active, participatory, and very enlightening panel of the day. Thank you so much. Enjoy your rest of the day wherever you are.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.